All right. Hey, welcome to Coach's Corner. R.J. Boudro here with Mitch Hancock. It's the first one we've done in a little while, but we're excited getting ready for our season coming up here in 1 week in Michigan. So it's Monday. Next Monday, we start our season. And we just want to come to you guys and make sure that, you don't miss anything kind of heading into your season. And we give you guys some ideas of what we're doing, any tips that we can give, we'd like to share with you guys. So we're just going to kind of go through. We're going to do a top 10. We're going to try to keep it down to 20 minutes. And let's roll. But Mitch, I'll let you start, man. Why don't you take off the first one?
Yeah, top 10 tips getting into this season from the wrestling vault. Number one, recruit, recruit, recruit. So obviously we want to get our numbers up in our program. Some have better numbers than others, but a few things that stick out to me are freshman football, right? So football players probably have been done for a couple weeks now, trying to figure out if they want to get involved in a winter sport. You have to get a hold of those young men and ladies and try to get them out on your wrestling team. So I think posters around the school will help, right? There are so many resources you can use with posters and how the same skills that apply to wrestling can apply to football. And then also maybe those students who don't make the basketball team, right? Basketball is a cut sport. If you have a student athlete who does not make the basketball team or wants to try out for the basketball team, tell them to go out and try out, right? You want to support their goals and ambitions and let them know if they don't make it that you have a home for them. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard of individuals' wrestling careers starting because they were cut from the basketball team. So get your social media accounts going, right? Start pushing it out there and making sure that you're recruiting to get as many kids out for the sport of wrestling to introduce them to the sport we all love so much.
Yeah, I think having an informational meeting before the season starts is really important. And then inviting everyone and anyone, telling your guys on your team that are coming out for the team to go get their friends and do that. And I think all of this goes together with a bigger purpose in wrestling too. I think sometimes we just want to coach the kids who want to wrestle, and if you don't want to wrestle, then kick rocks. But I don't think that's what it is, man. I think we have more to offer these kids than they realize. So we're trying to get anybody and everybody out and try to change their lives. And I think when you have that kind of mindset, that's number one. And then doing the things that you mentioned and trying to have an informational meeting. And, when on the informational meeting, making sure you impress the kids with, what they're going to get out of coming out for your sport, because wrestling's super intimidating. Kids think it's so hard, which it is hard, but they got to understand there's a connection between life change and our sport. So go ahead with number two.
Number two, gather athlete information. So it's critical, right? I think sometimes as teachers in the building, we have all that information in our hands. We have parents' names, emails, cell phones, and so on. But to organize it and store it in one place, I think is helpful, right? Because you're going to have times where you have to send communication blast out to your community. So it's important to gather all that information before the season starts so that you get organized. You want your athlete's name, their grades, parents' names. First names will help so that you can build those relationships with parents. Their email addresses, sometimes both cell phones will work too. You will have times when an athlete does not show up for a workout. You can reach out to those parents to see where they're at, see if the young man is safe, to see if he was driving to practice, and maybe be able to intervene there and make sure he's safe and sound. But gathering athlete information is critical.
Yeah, something I'll add to that too is just the sizes. They're large t-shirt and pants or whatever those types is, because I think at the team meeting at the beginning of the year is an opportunity to show the gear that you're going to get them and sometimes get them excited for those types of things. And then you can order your gear ahead of time, because we'll get to that in a little bit, but you want to be able to do that ahead of time so you're not, getting your uniforms late or, not having warm-ups for kids. You kind of want to look nice. So that's a part of the information that I like to grab from kids.
Well, roll into number three. That was number three, expectations team meeting. You just touched on it. Hold an introductory meeting. Make sure that everyone's on the same page. Coach Boudro, what do you guys cover at your team meetings?
Everything. We try to go through the dates of the year. I think it's really helpful for parents to have that. So we're going to give this to the kids to give to the parents. What are the important dates that are coming up? What are the pillars of our program? What is our mission statement? What's our core values? What these kids are going to learn? And then, trying to collect all the information, but then just trying to make a good impression on the kids, and making them feel welcome. And I make sure that, my leaders on the team are there and are welcoming the kids and just trying to make that team meeting impactful for a kid who's never seen our sport, and understanding that. How about you?
Love it. Yeah, one thing to add there, right? Rules. We all have so many rules as educators and in school districts. To me, the less rules, the better, right? I heard somewhere or read somewhere where there was a coach who had two rules: don't do anything to embarrass me, don't do anything to embarrass this program. And I thought that went a long ways. If a kid walks into practice late, he's embarrassing, right, the program. And so I think less rules, the better. I think if you can drive your mission statement home, as you indicated, I think those guys will understand that it's important to you and the program and the benefit of the entire team. So I think the less rules that you have within your program, it's easier for the athletes to remember that it's more than just following 20 different rules. And let's face it, after 3, they're probably tuning it out, right?
Yeah, I would say, the one rule that we have is do what you ought to do.
Yeah.
And if you can apply that to everything, and obviously we're going to hold kids accountable on certain things, but it gives you the opportunity, I think most importantly, when you only have 1 or 2 rules, to treat every situation uniquely, versus having to hold some kid accountable to something that's really not fair to him or the situation. So
Love it. Number 4, top 10 early season tips for coaches preparing for the alpha weigh-in process. Now, I know the window to weigh in has been open now in Michigan for a couple of weeks now, but it's important that parents, especially new parents, have a little bit of information on what that exactly means. Again, remember that the new wrestlers are new to this, new parents are new to this. So perhaps sending information home to the parents, I think that they can read, dissect, and process, I think is helpful leading into that day. A couple of key points there. You want your athletes to be hydrated, right? So making sure that they're observing, the color of their urine and making sure that it's clear and it's not dark. But I think being a great example for that is important too, making sure that you carry your water canvas around, and making sure that you're being a great example for those student athletes, because it is so important to be hydrated throughout the year. And then remind your athletes, right? We have an opening day here in Michigan on December 7th. So it's important for those guys to make sure that if they want to wrestle off at a certain weight class, that they're within the descent program to do so. So if you have let's say a 115 pounder who wants to come down to 106, or a 112 pounder who wants to come down to 106 and be eligible for that date, how many days out are you, right? So right now it's probably around 3%, 4.5% of that descent program. Make sure they can touch 106 by opening day.
Yeah, I just think also to just make sure that parents know that you're not freaking them out about this stuff. It's really for their safety. It's really for good nutrition, to make life habits, versus they get kind of scared about this body fat test and whether or not to make cut weight. And we don't use the word cut weight. We just try to manage our weight. We try to be healthy and put kids at the best possible spot they can to wrestle, and just make sure you're putting those kinds of verbiage out to kids, versus talking about cutting weight and how to do it. And it's just going to turn people off.
Yeah, I think that's great. Number 5, plan, right? So as educators, a lot of us know that work inside the building, that we have lesson plans every single day for our students. So it should be no different on the wrestling mats. We have a great tool with the wrestling vault. We love our fellow vaulters who can continue to use our product, but it's important that you plan ahead of time. I think the guys recognize that you put the time in, and prepare for them. And I think they appreciate that, right? But at the same time, don't overplan. We try to cover so much in the first week, and I think I'm more guilty than anyone in trying to do that. My practice plans are way too in-depth, way too long the first week of practice. Start off with the fundamentals, penetration steps, stance and motions, sprawls, just the basics that we got to get our guys back to going towards, because we are coming off a long freestyle season. Right. So a lot of our guys wrestle freestyle, and as you well know, right, a lot of crotch lifts, a lot of different scoring techniques and holds. So getting them back into holding a stance and getting in decent shape, I think heading into the competition season is important.
Yeah, I just think it's good to kind of have some standards, some boundaries. We stick to a 90-minute practice all the time, so we don't want to go over that just because we have so much, again, the paranoia of getting everything in. So like you said, starting basic, but then also wrestling. I think it's important for the kids to wrestle in the first couple practices, just because that's what they're there for, and I think you can do both. But then planning too, like you said, thinking about the things that you need to do prepare if you're going to travel early in the season, and some of the hotels and the different plannings, and making sure those important dates are out to your wrestlers and your parents so that they can plan accordingly. But yeah, I think you can over plan it too. So I just think it's, especially if this is your first year, it's a little different, but as you go into it, do it so that you can save your practice plans. So you can go over the year before and you can kind of review those and have some kind of a basis of what you're doing, and then beg, borrow, and steal. Ask questions. I'll go to Mitch Hancock and ask him for his practice plans, and he'll give them to me. And it's nice to be able to sharpen iron against another coach. So just don't be afraid to ask, swallow your pride, and see what other people are doing.
Yeah, great idea. Number 6, team retreats, team bonding, get to know your athletes. Coach, you want to share a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I think, it's important that you guys have some way for your athletes to know each other, but also to know their coaches. I think I take it for granted a lot, where I just assume kids know what I did in college, or they know what I did in high school. And I'll be surprised when 50% of the guys didn't even know I wrestled in college. And not that that's a big deal, but I think sometimes it's just good for them to know where some of this is coming from, to give them confidence in maybe what they did, or just because you don't know who you're going to connect with. I'm not saying you need to wrestle in college, but I think kids are going to want to know those interesting facts about their coaches. And it's going to find a way for them to connect with you. So having opportunities for you to connect with your athletes and kids through some vulnerability, through some honest and truth. So we will do something called Hero Highlight Heartbreak, where we'll have some of the captains on our team, and they'll kind of share some things that are really emotional for them, and what makes them who they are. And it's good for other athletes to kind of hear that. And we have our coaches do it too. That's just one example. So, I know we're doing something special this year, where we're going to go and set goals, do some team bonding with another team, right? We're going to go and do that. Iron sharpens iron. So it's our rival too. It's a team that really want to beat. We're wrestling them on the first date of the year. But before we do that, we're going to go sharpen our selves against them, and kind of prepare, because again, there's more to life than winning and losing. It's about kind of making boys into men and girls into women. So yeah, that's what we're up to. What do you think?
Yeah, I love that, right? And I'm right in there with you. I just think it doesn't have to be an extensive retreat either, right? Some teams you read in the college levels, overnight retreats, and getting the kids off their cell phones. You see it a lot on their social media pages prior to the season. I think that's an awesome way to do things. I also think there's some small ways in which you can build camaraderie, right? Paintball, bowling, community service. I got a friend who does his team heads out in the fall to help the local community with leaf pickup. So they get everyone's, mowers and leaf blowers and so on. And they have a sign up sheet, and there's the elderly in the community can ask for help. So anytime you can get your athletes moving in the same direction and around each other and rubbing elbows, I think it's important. But also, like you talked a little bit about vulnerability and being able to introduce your coaching staff to those athletes, have your coaches bring their wives. You can bring your wife, you can bring your children. So the athletes understand that you have a family, and that is your foundation, and you're doing the same things with them. And I think it's a great way to introduce your family to your athletes.
Yeah, great point, man. That's awesome. All right, going to
Number
number 7.
7,
Yeah.
meet the team night. Go ahead, coach.
Oh yeah, meet the team night. Just finding a way to highlight your athletes. It's going to be a season. I think if you're not really getting on board with the social media, I think you're missing out a little bit. So finding ways to let people know what you're doing in your program. So making sure you're updating dual meet scores through Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and trying to have that kind of a presence. But a good way to start that is to get a photographer, and to do some kind of a media day with your kids, and let them, because they love it, man. That's the way this generation is going. If you go to those college visits that you see now, some of the kids are going out there and they're getting to wear the team singlet and getting to take pictures and get on social media. And I think there's some good to that. I think I was a little bit against it at first, because I was all about humility, but at the same time, sports about having fun. And I think that media day stuff is really kind of important. The kids like it. And so, I give our kids some ownership in our singlets too. If we want to order some singlets, I'll let them design them and have them have a say on what we're doing as far as our gear orders and stuff like that. So those are all really important things. I don't like them, to be honest, but I have to do it, and our kids love them. So you got to kind of swallow your pride a little bit and do what they want to do.
I'm right with you, coach, right? When you're dealing with 14 to 18-year-olds, sometimes it can be hard, right? So we have a media photo day where, we invite our photographer into town and he's got the light set up and sledgehammers and chains, and these kids are doing all these animations. And right, I'm not too much into that, but the kids enjoy it. The kids love it. Their parents enjoy it. And I think that's why we're in it, right? 10 years ago, we weren't doing those types of things, but today's day and age, we are. So taking those photographs and allowing a media person to come in and maybe interview your athletes, I think is important. It also allows you to use those photos for the rest of the year on social media, right? And I think
Or
it's
even
important that any type of program, whatever you're trying to build, have a presence out in the community, whether it's your local community or statewide community or national-wide community. You have to have a brand and you have to have a program. And I think, a media day will support that. You can invite your local beat writers in, right? Your local sports writers and maybe website writers in to, meet the team and so on. So I think it is an important night. Some of us neglect it, but maybe something you want to keep an eye on.
absolutely. Yeah, going to number 8, just making sure you're
Yep.
ordering supplies too. All the things that you need. And again, it's good to write these things down, keep your receipts handy so that going into the next year, it's a simple re-up on some of the things. And it's good to check and say, all right, I ordered 8 gallons of 8 gallons of Defense soap and we had 1 left over. It was a perfect amount, or I ordered too much, or I didn't order enough, those types of things. But just Defense soap, mat cleaner, mops, nose plugs, get with your trainer, have him help you get your med kits set up and those types of things, because when December 7th hits and it's day 1, you don't want to be caught standing there with your hands up, like what the heck is going on here. You want to be ready. So even that first day of practice, so just making sure your kids are ready. And then when they come into that first day of practice, they know you've been prepared.
Yeah, a couple of things to add on to their scale certification, right? If you haven't done so, a good time to get your scales certified. And then also, renew your subscriptions to Matt Boston Track Wrestling. I think both those are valuable tools that I think coaches can use. Somewhat expensive, but I think the information that it spits back is vital to any program who wants to be successful. Track Wrestling does the statistics portion too. I think for a little bit more money, you can order the statistics portal of it. And it obviously all matches and record summaries have to go through Track Wrestling, but it will also kick back your statistics so you have them at the banquet at the end of the year.
Yeah, no, that's important for sure.
Number 9, the cardio base. So you have an aerobic base and anaerobic base. I'll touch on this quickly. And R.J., you said it best. You can build that aerobic base, I think, through wrestling. So your longer bouts, I think, are a good idea. So early in the season, you should be aiming for maybe 10-minute goes, 15-minute goes to help those athletes build that aerobic base. The short hard goes may be challenging for them because their anaerobic base is not built. So the better their aerobic base, long distance running, I think, is a good way to build it. Anywhere where they can have their heart rate from like 135 to 150, I think is a really good idea. If they're getting up to 165 and higher, you're talking an anaerobic push. So the more exercise your guys can do with the aerobic base and developing that aerobic base will allow you to push it when it comes to January and February and maybe in the meat and potatoes of your season. So stance in motion, longer distance running helps with those two things.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just give you mine. I think we do that through wrestling and through practice and through that 90 minutes. And then I encourage my athletes to do it on their own. And that's just us personally. We don't run in practice, never have, and probably never will. But I do encourage my athletes to run on their own and get that long distance running in, because if they want it bad enough, I think they'll listen. Some kids just don't know any better, and you're going to have to help them through it. But the 90 minutes, we just try to keep it with wrestling, and like you said, have different practices where you're building bases, and it's going to come, and know that it's going to come. And it's okay if you're not in shape on day 1. It'd be better if you were, but it's okay that you're not. It doesn't matter how you feel in November and December. It's about how you feel in February and March.
Yeah, and be observant there as a coach, right? If you see the guys fatiguing quickly, right, you got to blow the whistle and call it off, because your athletes are going to get hurt when they experience fatigue. And they're wrestling live and hard. So you got to be very observant as a coach early in the year, be able to read your athletes, know when they've hit that wall, I can't tell you how many times we've stopped live wrestling because I felt the fatigue in the room was too much. And then we probably finish up with a little bit of technique or cool down. So be observant as a coach and allow your assistant coaches to have some feedback there too.
Good idea. That's great. That's a great point, man. Yeah.
Last one.
Yeah.
Number 10, coach, have fun, bring great energy to the room.
Yeah. I think that's probably, one of the most important parts about this whole thing is understanding that it's about having fun and trying to make it fun. So, making sure you have some games, scheduled in your practice plan, making sure that there's some jokes, there's some opportunities. So, we'll talk about at the beginning of practice. We'll have somebody share what they're grateful for. We'll have somebody maybe tell a joke and, bring some fun to it. And then it always, every year, depending on your wrestlers, the beginning of practice takes on a life of its own, so have a fun warm up, have a fun cool down and those types of things, but try to interject some short, fun games into that part of into any practice, I guess.
I love it. No one likes an energy vampire, right? So no matter what type of day you had in the office or you had at work, all right, those wrestlers don't know that. You have an opportunity to change your day, right, at 3:30, and you have an opportunity to change their day for the betterment. So if you can make a promise, a commitment to yourself to enter that wrestling room with great energy, a positive attitude, and make sure that you're feeding them good energy, I think it's a win-win, right? We all know as people, we want to be around charismatic, high energy, fun-loving people. So pour into your athletes a lot of love, a lot of positivity, and a lot of energy, and I think you'll get a lot in return.
Absolutely. Amen, man. Appreciate it. This is good stuff.
That's 10 early season tips, coach. Sorry about the jackhammer outside.
No, I didn't even hear it, man, but excited for the season. Coaches, hopefully you guys get this and can implement it. If you guys have questions, don't hesitate to send us an email from the Wrestling Vault. We're happy to answer that. I'm happy to give you guys any secret we can give you.
Stay tuned.